Hey, Book Wars Pod. It's Kristen again. If you're able to tune in last week, you know that this is the second part of a two-parter. And if you weren't, you should go back to last week's episode of Book Wars Pod. We're doing a bonus episode that we ended up breaking into two parts because they had Holly and Kate and Chris. That's at Holly E83 on Twitter, as you may know her. She is on the Twitter a lot, and has a very great feed. But that's beside the point. This is, supposed to be an intro where I talk about, the Book Wars Pod and how this is part two of Kate, Chris, and Holly talking about Fanworks. So next week we should be back on our regular schedule because I will be back stateside, and we'll actually be able to record not in the middle of the night, etc., etc. Hopefully my technical difficulties will resolve when I cross the ocean. We can only hope, my friends. Anyway, I miss you guys. Wanted to say that. Not drinking beer, I'm drinking coffee. It's the middle of the day. But yeah, here's part two of that great conversation on Fanworks. And I'll talk to you guys soon.
All right, anyway, moving forward to things that are never bad, let's talk about shipping.
God damn it.
Obviously, Star Wars has seen its share and is currently seeing its share of shipping wars. Harry Potter obviously comes to mind. Twilight comes to mind in terms of the great shipping wars of the last decade or so. Which even some creators, I'm thinking of J.K. Rowling, take part in sometimes with her. She'll do interviews every once in a while where she'll be like, I wish I'd written so-and-so differently.
I don't want to talk about this.
But let's talk about shipping wars a little bit because, like, I think they are, like, this crucial aspect of fan works and fan fiction.
Fan engagement, really.
And fan engagement. And, like, they are sometimes controversial. They're sometimes very benign. Like, I don't know. I don't really have a question here, but just hashtag talk about shipping wars.
It's so weird for me because I don't really feel the need to engage. Like, I've been shipping for a long time, and I've been in fandoms where, like, people are, like, really mad at each other, and I'm very much well, I ship this thing. I don't care if you don't ship it. I don't care if you think I'm a bad person for shipping it.
Yes.
If you really don't like my ship, you can just, like, block me.
I know.
And we can all go about our business. Like,
right.
It's never been a thing that I wanted to engage in, and yet it clearly is very real.
Mm-hmm.
What is weird about shipping wars where in the canon the various romantic options are like real, something like Vampire Diaries, where it was like, or Twilight, this character literally at some point is going to choose between these two people. That I get a little bit. I mean, I still don't participate in it.
Right.
But I understand while it's still going on. I mean, I was a moderator of a Twilight message board back in the Eclipse Breaking Dawn era.
Mm-hmm.
So, I remember those days when you didn't know what was going to happen. Although in hindsight, I feel like it was pretty obvious.
Yeah.
Yeah. The internet is still baffling to me sometimes. When you're in a situation where, like, you have non-canonical ships, you don't have to fight with anybody.
Mm-hmm.
I want to hang out with people who ship the things that I ship, when I'm in the mood to talk about that ship. Not everybody that I'm friends with has to ship the same things, obviously, but, like, I'm not interested in arguing with people about this stuff.
Right. Right.
And I don't necessarily understand people who are.
Yes.
And this concept of like winning.
Oh my god, yeah, tell me about it.
Foreign to me. I don't know. I guess because I'm in fan years, I'm old. 35 years old. I've lived long enough to see like some of my ships were fine and then some of them broke up, and that's the way it goes.
Right.
You're not going to get what you want in every situation. So if this ship doesn't work out, then I'll read a bunch of fanfic about it. Totally. If it does, that's great. Maybe it's because I started with like my first big like ship as a teenager was Buffy and Angel.
Ooh, yes.
And like that had an ending that was like sweet but bittersweet.
Mm-hmm.
And like it really sort of set me up in this like headspace to be like, it's fine if they're not together. Like
right.
It was still an important storyline. Those episodes are still there. I can go back and watch them. That the shipping war thing never really appealed to me, but when they're selling t-shirts that say like Team Edward and Team Jacob, they're sort of driving you to this like us versus them. It's like opposing sports teams.
Yes. Oh my god.
Like in the end, does it really matter? But it's easy to get emotional about it, right?
Totally.
My thing is the best thing and yours is not as good.
I love that analogy. It's so fucking true.
And it's like at the end of the season, somebody's gonna win. It's only one that's gonna make it at the end, and it may not be you. So like, just chill.
I know. At the end of the day, it's just what it is. I mean, the other thing is that like, I don't know if people don't fully like internalize that they are not in charge of driving this bus or whatever. I don't know. Holly, I've talked about this a little bit before, but we're like very live and let ship people.
Yeah.
It's like, just go, like you ship what you want to ship. It's cool. And there are a lot of folks who find, all right, we're gonna talk about Reylo.
Let's talk about it.
We're doing it. We're doing it. I think this is the first time we've like mentioned Reylo on this podcast. And I've been like, oh, we're not talking about it because we don't want to get involved.
No, I've made fun of them before.
I mean, you have, but like in passing.
Yeah. Okay. Had an actual discussion.
Yeah, exactly. But there are a lot of folks who find Reylo as a ship problematic, and trust me, I understand why. However, I don't know. I feel like anti-Reylos and then Reylos have a habit of doing that thing, Holly, where they just go looking for fights to have with people.
Yeah,
and I'm like, why?
Here's the thing. I've been on Tumblr for 8 years.
Mm-hmm.
I've literally never gone into a stranger's inbox to talk to them about something that they like or they don't like. And that's the problem I see. Like, I mean, I don't have any hardcore Star Wars ships apart from Han and Leia. So,
naturally.
that's like the OG ship, right?
Totally.
I walked out of The Last Jedi going, I could watch them make out. And I've read some fanfic. I don't care if it happens. I don't care what happens in the movie because obviously I'm a person who's like, well, I can read fanfic about it or find some gift sets about it if I'm really interested in it.
Totally.
But I think it's important to think about the fact that the shippers are people.
Mm-hmm.
There's a person.
What a concept.
There's a person behind that. There's a person behind that Twitter handle or Tumblr handle on both sides.
Right.
That has a whole history of, whatever in their life that you don't know about.
Mm-hmm.
And, part of it comes from a very young age. I read and watched whatever I wanted to. Essentially, my mother never banned me from reading anything, and I read a lot of crap that was probably not great, and I read a lot of stuff that was.
That was me.
And I learned I learned what was good in real life and what was bad in real life.
Right.
And I think that there's this, and it's definitely not limited to Star Wars. I mean, like I said, I came out of the Twilight fandom and the Vampire Diaries fandom, and you see similar stuff there to get a little like, oh my god, if you like this bad boy, you're promoting abuse of women. And I'm like, I don't know anybody who ships this who dates bad men.
Right.
Nobody,
right.
You're, in a lot of ways, you're lecturing to women to say, if you would just stop liking these fictional people, then maybe the patriarchy wouldn't treat you so badly.
I know, which is like...
And I'm just not willing to go there.
I know, there are like 11 different kinds of things I could say about that.
I mean, and I understand that we should call out... we should talk about the problems in romantic relationships as they're depicted in fiction.
Yes.
I mean, there's a balance, right? We can't talk about how important it is to have representation and then say, oh, we'll read whatever you want, it doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
Because those two things don't agree, right? You can't
Correct.
say that it doesn't matter, because it does.
Absolutely.
But there is you have to trust people to be able to read and watch things and be critical of them, but also like certain parts of them.
Totally.
Like, a Reylo example is that I think it's great that we talk so much after The Last Jedi came out about him negging her.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's a really good thing that young women observing this discussion need to hear. Don't let a guy do that to you.
Absolutely.
We can talk about Edward Cullen being controlling.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good thing to talk about, so that young women understand that that's not a thing that they should, ever let their boyfriends get away with.
Absolutely.
But that doesn't mean that we should ban Twilight from libraries. Like,
right.
There's a middle ground here. We shouldn't ban Reylo fanfics or say that anybody who reads Reylo is a bad person. Like, I could talk all day about women reading bad boys or super powerful bad boys as a power fantasy within the patriarchy. Like, there's a reason that these sorts of stories appeal to women.
Absolutely.
And it's not because they're terrible people or they secretly love the patriarchy or they secretly want to be abused. Like, there are reasons that some women, not all of them, if you don't like them, that's fine. And I think it's just important to keep in mind that there are reasons people want to read these stories, but we also should not let them, let movies and TV shows go without criticism in the way that they depict romantic relationships either. We can do both things.
Exactly. And another part of it, which Holly, you and I have definitely talked about before, is how, there are a lot of people who have, kinks or trauma or whatever the hell that, all of these things that are, affecting them, that are, maybe problematic, that people really do process through art and creation and consuming those things, and fanfic is one of those venues where you can like safely explore those things or like express those things, and literally no one gets hurt because no one's like putting a gun to your head and making you sit down and read fanfic that you don't want to read.
Right. I mean, I know that there are all kinds of types of stories that I want to read about that I don't ever want to encounter in real life. I've run into people in fandom who do have past trauma, who have talked about how their therapist, I don't remember their names, which is good because I wouldn't give it, but
Sure.
Who said, their therapist said, yes, this is a valid way to work out your trauma. You're working through some shit. Even on a level of, it doesn't have to be like deep trauma, just like, I don't know, maybe you just got some light daddy issues like most of us,
right,
maybe reading about Ben Solo helps you work through your daddy issues.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a pretty safe way to do it. There's a famous like quote by Lin-Manuel Miranda that goes around Tumblr every so often about how like he has no interest in cheating on his wife, but he enjoyed writing Hamilton anyway. Like
Yeah. Yeah, no.
we
what a
all,
great
you
example.
know, we all enjoy all kinds of stories that you know, we're never going to get into in real life. We like stuff like Mr. and Mrs. Smith. I don't want to be an assassin, but I enjoy that movie.
For sure.
Though, you know, in real life, those would not be good people, but we can be entertained by them. And there's a, to sort of get into the gender side of it, there is a, some of this pearl clutching is very aimed at young women.
Oh, absolutely.
And I absolutely see it in the Star Wars fandom because, you know, Reylo isn't the most popular Star Wars ship on AO3.
Right.
The most
But it's the
popular
one we talk about.
Right, it's the one we talk about because people are like trying to shove those shippers out, you know?
Mm-hmm.
When Kylo and Hux is a more popular ship, and
God bless.
in a lot of ways maybe more problematic, like...
Right.
I mean, I don't find it problematic because it's fiction, it doesn't bother me, but,
Mm-hmm.
you know...
Same.
It shouldn't be, well, that one's fine, but this other one is not fine because it involves, like, a woman, and we need to stop women from liking it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it's like, do these people go to Star Wars, these same people who hate Reylo shippers, do they go to Star Wars conventions and ask people dressed as Vader if they're secretly fascist?
Right, I know. It's just this obsession with putting value judgments on women's desires.
And it I mean, not to say that women don't cosplay, but you could see how that's a gendered thing where we're overly concerned about how this shipping situation is affecting the brains of women, turning them into some sort of victim when we've got thousands of dudes out here dressing up like Kylo for Halloween. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Mm-hmm.
But we're not placing the same sort of value judgment on it.
Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah. That actually gets into a really good question that I want to talk about gender in fan works. And this was asked by Nancy, who is our pod mom, at Nancy Pants of the Tachi Station, of TachiStation.net and the Tachi Station Radio Network.
Co-owner, lovely human.
Yeah. And she asked why certain fan works, mostly visual stuff, are taken more seriously than fanfic. Especially when those visual fan works are often done by men. And, you know, this is something we talked a little bit about earlier, and how I didn't necessarily see costuming as something that is, quote unquote, a fan work, because, you know, for whatever reason, but it is something that the stereotype is, it is something that's more done by men.
Or at least in Star Wars.
In Star Wars, yes. Not saying that's true. I have no idea what the stats are, but I don't even necessarily think that's true. But like, that's the view of it. I
would say that's because I know, at least for the 501st, which is, in case people somehow don't know, is the costuming group for Star Wars. It's an official costuming membership group that focuses on dark side characters, but I believe statistically it's the majority of folks who have membership in the 501st are men.
Are they? Yeah.
And it's, I think, primarily because the 501st was a group that was started by dudes who were ex-military, because they were Star Wars fans and they were ex-military, and they wanted to dress up as stormtroopers because, again, they saw that as a military group that would give them that sense of friendship and brotherhood that they missed being ex-military and then transitioning into civilian life. Like, a lot of the 501st traditions and like things that we do, like a lot of it is based on military tradition. You know, like we have challenge coins, which is, again, it's like a military thing, and we make those, like, it's one of those things where, like, if you're at a bar with your 501st buddies and they're like just like, you know, pop out like literally a physical coin that's like has the 501st logo on it, like, do you have it? That's a tradition that came from the military.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yeah. And I mean, I think also, like, there's something to the fact that if you're a woman who wants to dress up or who wants to cosplay as a character in Star Wars, for the majority of Star Wars, that was a very short list.
Yeah.
Totally.
There were not very many characters that you could dress up as. I mean, like, could you always do female troopers behind armor or gender bend other characters? Absolutely, but the patriarchy doesn't like to be challenged, and so that comes with its own separate barriers to it. And so I think that, like, that's a big part of it, that, like, a lot of these, you know, particularly costuming, but other things like that that focus on specific characters, that's stuff that is inherently gendered because the selection that you have is gendered.
Right.
Well, and I'm assuming, I don't know for you know, I don't have a huge background in either of these fandoms, but I'm assuming that back in, the 70s and early 80s, when it became, you know, when you started with, like, these fan meetings, conventions and stuff, women were not necessarily just free to go dress up and mix with all these dudes, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it totally makes sense to me that that men would get into things like costuming where they would meet up with each other at cons, because that's completely safe for them, right?
Totally.
Women, it's not necessarily safe for you, and women found a way to express their fandom that they could do from their house.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Where they could, you know, writing a story and sending it to other female fans is a thing that you could do with your spare time.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
That didn't involve you putting yourself in a social situation that may not have been the most fun for you.
Totally. I mean, yeah.
And I think we don't realize how much of the traditions and stuff that we still have to this day have their roots in that time of fandom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is so super true. I mean, there are so many women who, you know, obviously, like, Leia's one of the few, you know, female characters that women can dress up as, and there's a fair segment of ladies who see, you know, Slave Leia as actually being empowering, because of the whole the Hutt Slayer retconning and all that cool stuff. But you know, they're of course they're the ones who get most harassed at cons because, you know, people.
Yeah,
think
I mean that's still a problem, and I would think that it would have been worse in the early 80s.
Oh fuck yeah!
Yeah, I can only imagine.
I mean, and you know, it even goes back to, for God's sakes, the filming of A New Hope, when George Lucas told Carrie Fisher that there are no bras in space. Like, for Christ's sakes. I know. Yeah. And just you know, to, you know, more directly address Nancy's questions, as she mentioned visual art and visual fan works. A lot of it, I feel like, is that guys are more comfortable doing visual art and that sort of thing because, you know, and I think it's still like this, but it's, you know, when it comes to stuff like comics and you wanting to break into the industry, what they want to see is a portfolio of you, you know, putting your own spin on IPs that already exist. So people are already, like, making quote-unquote fan art of, like, you know, Spider-Man or Batman or whatever the fuck. And I see plenty of people trying to put their own spin on Star Wars characters, and, you know, especially because Star Wars comics are so big right now, doing that sort of thing so that they could get some attention. I don't say getting attention in a negative way, like that's kind of how you make it as a comics artist, but that's, you know, that's a venue that's really always been open to men, and I think because of that, like, it's not seen as lesser than. In my personal experience, too, I've seen fewer men writing fanfic than women. Full disclosure, basically the only fanfic I read at this point is Star Wars Rebels, The Last of Us, and The Witcher. And most of those fanfics, at least in those communities, is written by women.
I'm pretty sure to my knowledge, I've not encountered a cishet man fanfic writer in my fandom travels. And I read in, I don't know, anywhere between 10 and 15 fandoms you know, over the course of a few months. I keep a list of like all my pairings, and you can like favorite them in AO3, and I have a bunch that just like what I'm in the mood for. And I don't know off the top of my head when I think about my favorite writers, none of them are cishet men.
I know, like, literally one. That's it.
And
One.
to give my take on Nancy's question, I think part of it is to go back to that thing we said about fanfic being seen as romance and sex.
Yeah.
And so it's in a patriarchal society where most of those types of stories are written and consumed by women. We simply value them less, and it starts from a young age. Soap operas, romantic comedies, romance novels, all of these things that are aimed at women are mocked and joked about and not taken seriously as art. And fanfic, I think, is lumped into that same category as a thing for and by women, even though it, you know, the audience is a little bit more diverse than that. It's still mostly women. And so, I mean, as with a lot of things, the answer is the patriarchy.
Yeah, totally. Absolutely. Yeah, no, that's a great point.
You guys got some interesting questions.
Right?
From your listeners.
Right?
Diana, to go back to the one that Diana asked, because I feel like she asked she'd like to hear a discussion of how fan works versus licensed work is treated by fans. And I think that this is interesting because I started out, before I ever knew what fanfic was, I read a lot of media tie-in novels.
Me too.
And it's just such a different world. Because, I mean, one thing we don't look as positively on something that is not canonically endorsed, right? Like,
Totally.
Something that's a licensed fan work has the official stamp on it.
Right, and I want to point out here that, you know, Chris won't read fanfic, and he doesn't love reading Legends because he knows it's not canon.
It's not I won't read it, it's that
You
I
don't
have
love.
a different...
I said you don't love reading it.
Okay.
And I think that's I think that's a valid view. I think that there are people back before I got into fanfic, I was exactly the same way.
Sure, yeah.
And when I first started reading fanfic, I only wanted to read fanfics that were like super close to being canon compliant, except for that one piece that I was like missing.
Yes.
From the, you know, from the canonical work. So it was like, this is X-Men First Class, but with some kissing, right? And then like, so I started there, and then it like spiraled out of control. But the great thing, you know, sort of the interesting thing about fanfic versus licensed stuff is that it doesn't have to be consistent with anything except itself.
Right.
So if you go and read, like, I read a bunch of Buffy tie-in novels when I was a teenager, and a lot of them are good, but in the end they are, and this is a little different from Star Wars, because the Buffyverse is not as huge as the Star Wars verse, right? In the Star Wars verse, you can take a character like Jen and write an entire backstory for her that has depth and meaning. In the Buffyverse, you would get these media tie-in novels that took place like in between seasons.
Right.
And like you can't kill off characters
that
people care about. You can't break up couples or get couples together. Or, you know, there's a lot of things that you can't do because you have to adhere to the canon. And it's sort of what makes, I mean, this whole Legend situation interesting, because I was reading expanded universe novels back in the late 90s, or whatever they were calling the Star Wars books back then.
Yes.
And it's sort of interesting to me that basically they did away with them because they didn't want to have to be internally consistent to them anymore.
Right. Well, I mean, they weren't internally consistent to each other anyway, so...
Yeah, I mean, I think that's and I feel like a separate podcast, but the whole Legends versus canon thing in Star Wars specifically is its own can of worms, because George Lucas himself never saw any of the expanded universe material as binding.
Right. So is it real if... I don't know, I have I still, even after years of reading fanfic and stuff, there's always going to be a difference to me between canon and fanfic. Like, it just... Seeing it acted out on screen, or in, you know, a book that I go and buy in my Barnes & Noble, is still different than reading a fanfic. I have a friend who is a professor of media studies who will argue with you all day long that there is no difference. She's like an extreme, like, death of the author person, that the designation of canon is a construct in our minds. I mean, and she's right, but it doesn't change the fact that my mind can't get around it.
Right, yeah, absolutely. I would love to talk to this person. Anyway, go on.
I'll hook you up.
Excellent.
Awesome. Another question that we skipped over and I want to come back to now is from another one of our listeners, Matt.
And I just want to point out also, because we should plug this, all the questions we got for today that come from social media are actually from the Tashi Station Patreon Slack. So if you give us $1 every month, you can come and talk to us about these sorts of things, and also scream about Kylux and how great it is. But anyway, go on.
Yeah, absolutely. No, the Tashi Station Patreon Slack is a wide world of fantastic people.
Also, there's somebody in there who posts pictures of Corgi all the time, which is very important to me.
It's true.
So,
it's
anyway,
true.
go on.
Anyway, so this question, Matt asks, I'd be interested in hearing you explore fanfiction as a more constructive outlet for disappointment and disagreement with official works. And this, he's specifically thinking about the remake The Last Jedi nonsense.
Jesus
which,
Christ.
Holly, I don't know how deep into the Star Wars fandom you are, but there's
I mean, I definitely read those tweets from the people who were wanting to remake The Last Jedi. I definitely remember that for sure. And I read this question earlier and was thinking about it. And I think it's a great question. And I think that the difference here is that, for the most part, the spirit of fanfic is not to marginalize women or...
Yeah.
You know, because that's sort of what it boiled down to. Like, it's not to, you know, say we didn't get enough menfolk in this story.
Correct.
Or, you know, which is not to say that, I mean, obviously there are fanfics, you probably read them and go, man, that person is a misogynist. But that's not what fanfic is for. So fanfic can be about saying, this writer did something that I really didn't like and I want to quote unquote fix it.
Yeah.
But it's... For one thing, people who do that don't start big Twitter campaigns trying to get money for it. Like,
yes,
you know, fanfics are labors of love.
Absolutely.
and that was a labor of, I don't know what that was. It was a labor of hate.
Yes,
yeah.
Literally yes.
I mean, I remember there was a big project among several fanfiction authors when, and I'll keep coming back to Shameless as an example.
That is fine.
There was a season finale of Shameless where something happened that the fandom, Shameless, there's a big divide between, like, the general audience for Shameless, which is probably a lot of people in their, like, 30s and 40s just watching Showtime, right? You know, there's a difference between general audience. And this is true for The Last Jedi and stuff, too, you know?
Oh, God, yeah.
Your people who are reading your fanfics and writing them and doing your blog, your gift sets on Tumblr are not the same as the entire audience. So there was a thing that happened in the season finale that upset a big portion of this fandom, and they did, like, a project amongst, like, 4 or 5 fanfiction writers to quote-unquote fix the season. They were going to go back and do, like, 12 interconnected fanfics as a season of Shameless to fix what they didn't like.
Wow.
But there was no, like, give us money to do this, or, like, everybody is awful. It was like we were upset and we would like to write something that makes us feel better.
Right, and I mean, Fix-It fanfic is its own, category.
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's the difference. Like you said, exactly like you said, Holly. It's being a labor of love versus a labor of hate. It's like wanting to contribute to this IP or this franchise or whatever it is that you're writing about versus having some other shit going on in your psyche that you feel the need to act on.
Right. And I would say, I mean, we know for a fact that the dudes who were, on the remake The Last Jedi train were majority a bunch of cishet white dudes.
Oh, yeah.
And we've already talked about how authors of fanfic are often women who are finding this as a safe space. I want to say that fanfic is more exploring the possibilities of an IP, like the characters in the universe, whereas Remake The Last Jedi was definitely not about exploring the possibilities, but about closing possibilities to other people because they didn't want Haldo to exist.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, fanfic is there. I mean, part of its mission, and it's not to say it doesn't have problems, but part of fanfic's mission from the very beginning was to diversify the world it was taking from, not is there an opposite of diversify? Like, whatever the opposite of it is, that's what Remake The Last Jedi was trying to do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I know you have
now. I mean, like the stats on AO3 would tell us that we still have issues. Around race and gender, but it's still, we're still fanfic is still doing better than say network TV.
Mm-hmm. And you have a note here too about AO3 free speech that if you could
because that was something that was something that has been. AO3 just had their annual fundraising drive.
Mm-hmm.
And every year when they do that, there's always, and this goes back to the Reylo thing, of people who don't like the fact that certain ships are allowed to flourish on AO3.
Mm-hmm.
AO3 doesn't, it's not going to take fanfic off because you don't like it, even if it depicts things that are illegal or you find disgusting.
Yep.
Because their entire ethos is that this space is just a host. And they've got lawyers and all kinds of people advising them, because when you open the can of worms of saying, we're going to allow this thing but not that thing, is when you open yourself up to exploitation.
Yep.
Of those sorts of rules.
Totally.
And their way of dealing with it is to say, we're not going to moderate anything.
Yep.
And I mean, I understand the drive to say, there are certain things, especially things that are illegal, that we wish weren't on here. I mean, I get it.
Mm-hmm.
But there's no, there's no easy way to have a website that anybody on the internet can access that is moderated in that way.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I wasn't around for the shipping wars of like HP and all that stuff, but in the, in the wild, wild west days of the early internet, when sites did try to have rules about what you could post and what you couldn't post, you could get rid of certain genuinely problematic things, but it often turned into a weapon against people who were posting slash fic.
For sure.
Or unpopular ships.
Yep.
That were not, there's nothing wrong with them. It was just they were in the minority, and the people who didn't want them there could use the rules to get rid of them.
Mm-hmm.
And so when, the thing there, if I went into my local library, I'm sure that I would find books that have ideas in them that offend me. But the point is, we're not, I'm not for book banning.
Yep, exactly.
And
that's
so
exactly
I'm not for fic banning either.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, totally.
Yes.
All right, we have a couple more questions
yes,
that I want to move us into because we are we've been having a great but long discussion.
Every podcast I've ever been on has been 2 hours long in my life. Yeah,
I love it.
All of my podcasts are really long. I'm a talker. It's why my contribution to fandom is recording podcasts.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, super fair.
That's great.
We have one oh I'm sorry, go ahead, Kate.
No, I'm gonna start us off with the lighthearted questions since we've been talking about like real serious shit.
I was gonna start it off with the serious one so we could end on a light note. Interesting. Difference in strategies right here.
No, I mean I think Tom's question is just kind of a good one to end on, generally speaking.
I mean, that's fair.
So Diana's other question, her lighthearted question was, do we have any favorite fanfic tropes?
Oh, I have favorite fanfic tropes. Of course, being put on the spot to answer them. I like enemies to lovers.
Oh, yes. That's a great one.
And
yeah.
I like fluff sometimes too, when I'm in the, like, you know, when I'm in a mood where I need, like, when it's like self-care mood. Fluff is my thing.
Totally. I think my favorites are Enemies to Lovers is a big one for me because another one of my favorites more broadly is Angst with a Happy Ending. And I like slow burn things even though I want to throw my phone across the room every time I read them. And I know they're going to end up together. I just want to like I like screaming, as people know. And so
No.
Yo, fuck you. And I think what do you call it? Probably my favorite other one, just because it leads to so many fics that are just fun shenanigans when I want fun shenanigans, is fake relationship. Is a good one. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And to go back to something you mentioned earlier, Kate, I really like fics that are like fill-in.
Yes.
Fics. And I think even more so, I mean, to go along with that, I'm a really big fan of fics that that go to a certain point in canon and, like, flip something.
Mm-hmm.
Make a different choice and sort of go from there to see what would happen. Like, that, to me, that's the beauty of fanfic, that you can do that. Be like, well, what if this thing had happened instead of this other thing? Or if this character had died instead of lived, or lived instead of died, or whatever.
Yes.
And so I like those fics too.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
I have, waiting for me to read, one of our listeners sent it in, and I still haven't had time to read it because I've been so fucking busy. But she sent me a What If Qui-Gon Had Lived fic, and I really need to read it. Which sounds fun.
Hey, that's in my AO3 stats of, he's in one of the top 10 most popular ships for Star Wars on AO3.
Hey! That's fascinating.
I had no idea.
Me neither.
I love going into, like, fandoms that I don't read a ton of, because I'm very, you know, I know what ship I want to read, and I go and find it. I don't spend a lot of time looking at other things, and so to go into, like, a general fandom and see what's popular and what's not is always interesting to me.
That is so...
I mean, sometimes it's depressing, but it's interesting.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, that's so interesting. Especially because, like, I'm kind of like you. I'm one of those people who is mostly a canon shipper, and so I'm just, you know, there's all kinds of stuff going on.
I have a bunch of non-canon ships too, but I didn't really, like I said, I didn't get into slash shipping really until X-Men First Class.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, things that happened before that, like, it just never even occurred to me that I could, like, want two people who weren't together, you know, who may have been dudes to get together. So, yeah, that was, Qui-Gon wouldn't have pinged my radar in, 1997 or whatever, so, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Which is interesting to me, because I feel like my first, like, actual, like, ship was because my friend was a big, back with Harry Potter fandom, she was a big Sirius Remus shipper, and I've read so many fics she had given me in high school, to the point where I forget that that's not canon.
That's so funny to me, because, like, I totally understand why that ship is what it is. Like, now it's so obvious, but back when I was reading it, it just, you know, for so many years, I either liked the canon or I didn't, but I didn't really have any outlet to go beyond it.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, no. I'm either a canon shipper or things that will never ever happen in canon ever. Like, Fred Hermione is a big one for me.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
Yeah. Right? Right? It's weird, and it's fun.
Wait, what is the Qui-Gon? Who is Qui-Gon shipped with?
Obi.
Oh.
Obi-Wan.
Interesting.
Duh. Dude.
Yeah, I should have guessed that.
Master and Apprentice fic is such a big, like, Star Wars specific subgenre that it... Yeah.
And I mean, it's a pretty fast fandom rule that if there are two hot white guys in a property, a lot of
They're
people are
going
going
to
to
be
want
shipped,
them to
yep.
make out. Yeah.
Oh, God, yes.
Sounds about right.
I mean, isn't that at the heart of Kai Lux?
Yes.
Yep, absolutely.
Absolutely.
All right.
Chris, you don't have fanfic tropes.
I don't even. I mean, if you were to give me a list of fanfic tropes that, like, exist in, like, you know, non-fanfic fiction, then I could tell you what I find funny, but I don't read enough fanfic to know what they are for fanfic tropes.
3 hours.
I know, exactly. That's like, just drop me into the AO3 tags and I'll call you in a week.
Ooh, speaking of which, okay, this is a spontaneous me question. Holly, do you have a favorite AO3 tag that is just, like, ridiculous?
Oh gosh, do I? I don't know. I would have to. I should have done my homework for this.
Oh, that is totally fine.
I can't think of anything crazy. I really like anything that has to do with food.
Oh my god, yes.
So, like, my favorite fanfic tags are, like, bakery AUs, chef AUs, anything that's like a food competition.
Oh, that's great.
Like, those are all my favorite things.
I love that.
There's this one fanfic that would be controversial if I told everybody who it was because it's a controversial pairing.
Mm-hmm.
It's like 300,000 words of fluff about there's like no conflict. It's just two characters falling in love and one of them is a baker and it's just like constantly about food and falling in love.
That's wonderful.
For 300,000 words.
That's fantastic.
It's the best. You know, that's another reason where fanfic is different than licensed work, and different than canonical stuff in that the conventions of it and what you need to make a story are very different.
Mm-hmm.
Fanfics don't have to be about conflict. There doesn't have to be like something presented that then resolves itself.
Mm-hmm.
You can be like, let's write 2,000 words about these guys getting a milkshake and talking.
Exactly.
And that's a lot of times that's my, you know, I go to fanfic to get away from like the tension of canonical works.
Mm-hmm. Totally. So I have two. One of them is Star Wars specific, which is especially ridiculous, which is inappropriate use of the Force is my favorite thing.
Oh, I've seen that one a lot.
It makes me laugh really hard. And then my other one that's not necessarily Star Wars specific is makes me laugh really hard because it's a fucking Arrested Development reference, which I've had to explain to Chris anyway, even though he's watched all of Arrested Development and I have not, which is dead dove do not eat.
Oh, I've seen that one too.
Which makes me laugh. But anyway. Alright, Chris, you wanted to do the serious question then?
Yeah, so the final question we have is from Tom and
Darth and Turnus himself.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think we can like say who this is from. So this is Darth and Turnus on Twitter, who actually works at Del Rey Publishing and specifically on a lot of their Star Wars.
He's the associate editor.
He is the associate editor. Thank you for remembering his full title. He's the associate editor at Del Rey Publishing and works on a lot of their IP stuff. Specifically, I know he works on Star Wars and Warcraft. Mm-hmm. And he says, you know, I'd love to hear some constructive strategies on how quote-unquote official channels and creators can interact more meaningfully with fanfiction communities to create bonds and dialogue and serve them better than they have historically.
What a great question, Tom. Thank you.
It's a great question. I'm struggling because, like I said earlier, I'm a fourth wall person.
Mm-hmm.
I don't ever want to know that anybody officially involved in anything knows anything about my fanfiction. And I feel like that's not necessarily an uncommon feeling.
Mm-hmm.
but I also understand where the question is coming from, and that I feel like we have to have a strategy these days, right? Like, we've gone past the days when these companies can just pretend that fan fiction doesn't exist.
Sure, yeah.
Right?
Definitely.
Somebody was asking me, this is a different fandom, but somebody was asking me this week why One Direction fans were upset about this new movie that's coming out that's based on a fan fiction, that's based on a book that started out as fan fiction about Harry Styles.
Mm-hmm.
And like, why would fans be upset about this? And I'm like, because Harry Styles is now going to be associated with some fan fiction that he had nothing to do with and no say in.
Right.
And he's now going to be sort of used to market this thing, and like, it's crossing the streams in a way that many fans are still uncomfortable with.
Mm-hmm.
It's why they don't want actors ask about fan fiction, or,
Yes.
you know, like, it still feels like a very personal thing, partially because it's been so mocked.
Yes.
And so I think the biggest strategy to me would be to go back to what we were saying, understand that these are people, be respectful, try not to, this is like one of the TV shows that I watch, has this showrunner who's been very bad at interacting with like shippers and fanfic people.
Oof.
Because like, he doesn't want to write their ship. That's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But because he doesn't want to write the ship, he sort of like has been spiteful.
Ooh.
Because it's become such a thing on the internet, right? Like, it's the most popular pairing in this fandom, but he doesn't want to write it, and so then he acts like these people are crazy for shipping it, even though it's a really obvious hetero ship. Like, you had to know when you started this show that it was gonna be a ship. Like, if you didn't, you're dumb.
Yes.
And so he's been sort of mocking of it and spiteful, and then when he does try to lean into it, he's been also not great. Like, a female character who was with the male character in this ship, so like, she's the obstacle, right, in the shippers' minds. She got like, some violence was visited upon her in the plot, and he was like, well, I bet you guys enjoyed that.
Oh my god.
And I'm like,
Yikes.
no, this is not, don't lean into misogyny or whatever
No.
in support of a ship that you know is popular. I mean, I would say if you're gonna talk about it, try to be as hands off as possible. Don't come across as endorsing anything over the other. Or if you're gonna talk about ships and maybe limit yourself to, and I hate to say this because I'm a big non-canon shipper, but maybe limit yourself to canon ships.
Yeah.
You know, as a way of not showing, like, favoritism to one non-canonical ship over the other.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And, I mean, we've seen that, too, recently in Star Wars, where I think it was Ryan Johnson who was talking about the hut scene with Kylo and Rey.
Mm-hmm.
Was it Ryan or was it Mark Hamill who said that's the closest we're getting to a sex scene in Star Wars?
That was
from
Ryan,
Touch?
yeah.
That was Ryan. Yeah, I wish he hadn't said anything about it, honestly.
Yeah, Ryan
What are you
has
talking
some...
about? I put that on my Tumblr.
Ryan has a few opinions about that scene and the follow-up to that scene that I personally don't agree with. But that's fine, because he is a creator. He created something that I don't necessarily agree with. We'll see where the actual ship goes.
I mean, there is that, but also, Holly was talking about Death of the Author. Again, I'm really one of those people who are like, it's not mine anymore. Just don't talk about it, man. It's my opinion, but that's my opinion.
Yeah, I think every creator that I've ever seen that handled fanfic correctly was, their opinion on it was basically like, it's great that people love our stories. It's great that they want to write their own stuff. If they're finding something fulfilling in it, that's beautiful. We have to write what we feel we can do the best job of on our show or our movie.
Mm-hmm.
And that, you know, we can't, creators can't take every popular fan ship and put them in one show, like it just, or one movie, it just wouldn't work. So
Right.
they have to say, if you're happy with it, if you're having a good time, that's great. You know,
Yeah.
don't try not to place value judgments on people for shipping, even if you think it's weird.
Yep.
There are ships that I think are weird.
Yep. But then I don't
And,
read
you know,
them.
I don't read them. You know, and that's not to say that I don't ever say that on my Twitter. Like, I might say on my Twitter, man, that ship is weird.
Sure.
But, like, if that offends somebody, they're welcome to not follow me. Like,
Yeah.
you know, you can have that opinion, but I'm not the creator of a movie or a television show.
Mhm.
Like, there's a power dynamic there
Yeah.
that you need to keep in mind.
Totally.
Where, you know, you can say, hey, ship what you want. We're gonna write what we have, you know, want to write.
Right. And that mutual understanding is pretty important.
Yeah. Absolutely.
To Tom's question, just I think I have like a few like general things I think I can say about you know, building bridges between fans who want to make fan works and, you know, people in official capacities. Especially I guess about the books, since that's what you know, obviously that's what we engage in. But, you know, Star Wars authors like Claudia Gray and E.K. Johnson make no secret of the fact that they have written Star Wars fanfic. Some of them still write fanfic under, like, very, very obvious, or not obvious, but, like, very veiled pseudonyms and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Beth Rivas, sorry to interrupt, but I just want to call out that Beth Rivas actually talked to us on Twitter back when we were reading her Rebel Rising.
I was gonna mention
and
this, yeah.
Apologies for undercutting you then, but we referred to on the pod as the tie-in novels, and including Rebel Rising, as somewhat as sanctioned fanfic, and she totally agreed with that.
Right, yeah, no, exactly. Like, I mean, I think, you know, all three of those authors, all three of whom were women, no surprise, you know, being really open about that and not being ashamed of it, I think is a big thing, because, again, like, fanfiction has this stigma around it, even though it's valuable for so many reasons, including, you know, developing writing skills. I know I've developed a lot of writing skills just by writing fanfic. I think they should be encouraged. I think they should, you know, when you're writing a media tie-in novel, or, you know, that's directly labeled as such, I don't know what the fuck Star Wars books call themselves. I guess they're just, like, part of the larger canon, generally speaking. But,
yeah.
you know, just, what do you call it? I think you have a great platform to kind of dispel some of that, and talk about how, you know, it's all fake in space, so calm the fuck down, guys. And, you know, and the other thing, again, has to do with the stigma surrounding, you know, specifically fan fiction. We were talking earlier about writers who specifically say, you can't write fanfic about my stuff. Like, understand, I think, like, I think it's time to talk about having a mindset shift where it's not because people aren't rewriting your stuff because they think you did it wrong. People are rewriting your stuff because they feel passionately about it and they love it so much. And I think it's helpful for creators to,
Yeah, if they didn't
yeah.
think that there was good stuff in there, they wouldn't be writing fanfic about it.
Absolutely.
Like, you know, it's funny, like, Teen Wolf is a really good example of this.
Yeah.
The Teen Wolf fanfic community is huge. Like, I don't know the exact stats, but there probably are maybe only one or two other ships on AO3 that have more fics than Teen Wolf.
Wow.
Specifically the Steric fandom,
Mhm.
which I have literally been reading in for almost, I don't know, almost a decade?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, at least 6 or 7 years. And I haven't run out of fics. And as much as I like to, like, slag off the guy who created that show, because he's interesting.
Yes.
And that show had a lot of really big problems with it. And I mean, I quit watching it. I really did. Something happened that made me so mad that I said, well, I'm not going to watch this anymore, but I'm still going to read the fanfic.
Mm-hmm.
But there's still obviously something in that show that was so interesting, whether it be the performances of actors or something, certain episodes or whatever that was good enough to make me want to read these fanfics and still be reading them 7 years later.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, there aren't very many people who do that no fanfic rule nowadays, which is nice.
Yes.
If
definitely.
only because they realized that it wasn't working.
Yes.
They may not love that people write fanfic about their stuff, but you really just have like Anne Rice
Yes.
hanging out there and a couple of other people.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
and I think what we're proving is that we're in peak TV, right? Fanfic has been around forever. Like, fanfic is not keeping people from going to the movies
Mm-hmm.
or watching shows, or it's not cannibalizing your audience.
Absolutely.
So it's really only the reason that they started leveraging these fandoms is because it's actually trying to increase viewership.
Mm-hmm.
Like getting like these, as much as I don't like ship wars, like getting them going or getting people talking about these things on Tumblr and Twitter piques people's attention.
Totally.
Mm-hmm.
Seeing things in trending topics or gift sets going across your dashboard or whatever gets people's attention.
Absolutely.
And let them contribute to your little sandbox.
Mm-hmm. Totally. And I just want to point out to our listeners, I know Tom's in kind of a funny situation because if you're working for Star Wars in any capacity, including for Del Rey, the publisher, you can't read fanfic. It's like literally in their contract that they can't
that's
read it.
really important to note.
Yeah.
Do not send your fanfic to anybody who is in charge or has anything to do with creating canon.
Yeah, please don't.
They cannot read it.
Please don't send them your unsolicited novel ideas. Don't do it. It is illegal. They can't read it, and it's nothing personal. So I know, Tom, that puts you in a little bit of a sticky situation, but just I think that just honestly understanding that people are making things because they love the IP and they love people's work, that goes a long way. To stop shitting on fanfic.
Yeah, just take it all as a compliment.
Yeah.
It's all well intended in its own way, and there's a whole slippery slope of the well intentions thing, but in this specific instance, it is all well intended. There are varying degrees of what it comes out as there are of any creative product, but it's all well intended. It's all a compliment to the IP's work, and in this specific instance should be taken as such.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And as a consumer of fanfic, all I really want from official channels is to feel like they respect me as a viewer.
Mm-hmm.
No matter who I ship. As long as I'm being friendly and polite to them, I'm not one of these people that thinks that you have to be polite to people who are not being polite to you. I mean, if somebody's being a jerk, then block them or tell them they're being a jerk.
Mm-hmm.
But if I'm being, if I'm being completely respectful and I'm I like Raylo or whatever, respect that. Don't treat me like a weirdo.
Yeah.
Yep,
Just say, hey, love the passion. Go on about your business.
Totally.
Yep.
That's exactly it. Before we wrap, first of all, Holly, thank you for coming on. This was such a great conversation. I had so much
You're
fun.
welcome.
Yeah,
It
thank you
was
so
fun.
much, Holly. And
So much fun.
I don't want to preclude Kate here, but I think this is a great time, Holly, for you to plug yourself and
Yes.
any projects that you're working on that you want people to know about.
Yes, please.
Yeah, my other podcast, and we talk a lot about this kind of stuff on there, oddly enough, because this is just the sort of thing that I like to chat about. My podcast about Shameless is called Alibi Cast. You can find us on Tumblr at alibicast.tumblr.com. You can also find us on Twitter at AlibiCast. And Shameless is on hiatus until January, so there's not really much content out there right now. Another thing that you can look out for is that for a couple of years, I co-hosted a Veronica Mars podcast.
Ooh.
And it is called the Ahoy Mateys podcast. And its Twitter handle is at Ahoy Mateys Cast. There is a backlog of episodes out there covering where my co-host Carrie Raisler from the AV Club and I talked about every episode of Veronica Mars. obviously that show's being revived at Hulu. So we will be, as far as I know, coming back to cover those new episodes next year when they come out. We may be doing some stuff in the meantime to gear up for that. So if you're interested in Veronica Mars, check that out as well.
Awesome.
Yay.
And so again, thank you so much for joining us, Holly. This has been a fantastic conversation.
Thanks, guys. It was great.
Yeah. And for our listeners, thank you again for your patience in this unexpected interlude in our discussion of Canto Bight.
Fuck you, Denmark.
Yeah. We think we're close to figuring it out, and if we're not close to figuring it out, we're close to Kristen being back in the country. So we're going to be back either next week or the week after to read the last novella in Canto Bight, The Ride by John Jackson Miller. So you still have time to read that and discuss it with us. Send us your questions. We also, in 2 weeks, are going to have Tom Darth-Turnus himself, author of that great question that we had on the podcast, to discuss Canto Bight on our wrap-up, and also give away 2 copies of the book as well. And Kate, can you remind people how they can go about winning those copies of Canto Bight?
Well, it's very simple, Christopher. They just have to review us on their favorite podcasting platform. We write a sentence, just write a sentence.
It can be a sentence fragment. That's fine.
It was good. Is a sentence. Anyway, write a sentence, screenshot it to us, and you will be entered. And it's as simple as that.
Perfect. So when we wrap up Canto Bight, we're going to be giving away 2 copies of the book. So if you haven't read it, you want a copy, you want to give a copy to a friend for Christmas, it makes a great gift. If you have a friend who likes Star Wars and is looking for someone to get involved, or somewhere to get involved, do that. In the meantime, hit us up on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and Tumblr at BookWarsPod, bookwarspod@gmail.com if you want to email us. And as Kate just said, rate, review, and subscribe to us and to the Tashi Station Radio mega feed. If you have the means and are so inclined, please donate to the Tashi Station Radio Patreon, which is the source of all these questions from our fantastic and always entertaining and positive Slack conversations. Please give to us at coffee.com/bookwarspod. These really help us cover our hosting and production costs, so we really appreciate it. And for all of us, our theme song is Whiz Bang by Poddington Bear. Our logo and artwork are by Joby Terra Design. For Kate and for Holly and for myself, thank you so much for listening to the Book Wars Pod, and we will be back next week.